Hey, good afternoon. I just want to really make a quick video and touch on something I found very interesting just now on Twitter, um, where Clint Russell, the host of Liberty Lockdown, is having a very engaging conversation with the CEO of the Center for Employment of Justice and also an ex-Navy JAG litigator, an expert on workplace law, Pam Keith. Um, Interestingly enough, this conversation centers around the need for weapons of war, as she would state, which is really a vague term when you think about it. What does weapons of war mean? Usually, this is open for interpretation. This is what gets us in trouble anyway. But what I want to do is actually share a specific comment that I want to touch on a little bit here. And as you can see, here's Liberty Lockdown, where he says the most basic human right is self-defense, the thing you once stripped from us. And she wrote, and this is what she responded: self-defense from what? Policies you don't like? Election results that disappoint you? Someone who cut you off on the road? Defending yourself, your family, and property does not require a weapon designed to take out a platoon at 500 yards. Only trembling cowards need that. Now, that is interesting. And quite revealing of Pam's view of what the public needs, not what the military needs. Well, she's ex-military. The public itself would need weapons of war. I mean, this is what is basically guaranteed us in the Second Amendment. And the right to bear arms, in which it's stated that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I see a lot of people from the left basically say, well, they didn't have AR-15s and they didn't have M16s, M50s back in the day. We're talking about muskets. Well, that's not what they were talking about either. They weren't talking about specific weapons of war. They were talking about weapons needed to fight against what? The military. Wouldn't you think the founding fathers would know something about tyranny? Well, they were fighting against it, which was the monarchy of England. Aren't you glad that they defeated them, a bunch of farmers, along with help from the French? And it's interesting that there's people that will attack this, and they'll attack the preamble of this Second Amendment, and that they want it amended to where a specific weapon is only regulated to the public. We're not talking about defending ourselves from the common criminal. Even the common criminal sometimes is much better armed than the average citizen. And yeah, should gun regulation be applied to every American citizen? Absolutely. And I'm not saying that everybody should have a weapon of war, just, spread it around. I think as long as the military has weapons of war, the citizens should have weapons of war. That means we're really lacking. And now, Pam, you might be saying, weapons of war for what? You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a right-wing conspiracy theorist. You think that the United States military will ever attack us and, kill its own citizens. Let me remind you about who I am. I'm a nobody. I host The Darkened Hour, which is a show dedicated to the events of September 11, 2001. I don't vote. I don't believe in voting, because if voting actually worked, it would be illegal. I can't take credit for that quote, but I love that quote. Voting has never worked for us. It never has for the common people. You may disagree. You're a Biden voter. You voted for Biden. And we're going to get into that in just a second. So I don't come from a prejudicial political point of view. Secondly, I'm a lot different from most people. I'm very detached from divisive issues such as racism, politics, religion. Even though I'm an atheist, I do think that the United States should have the freedom to worship any faith that they so choose. I think that was one of the best preambles of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights uh, that afford protection to people who want to freely worship. Again, the one thing about those who fled the monarchy in England was to get away from them being forcibly taxed and give money to the church. And that the Catholics here in the United States knew that, and some of the founding fathers were Protestants and Baptists, and that they wanted uh, whatever government was going to be formed would not interfere with those of a professing faith and those who do not profess a faith, and that they would share a commonality of protection. So I'm not coming at this from any type of divisive worldview. Most people do, and that's because most people have not detached themselves from human constructs. So I'm going to defend this issue of having weapons of war without sounding unhinged or attached to a divisive worldview. And what I'm going to do is use just recent times as the example of why the American citizenry needs to have weapons of war against the standing military of the United States, who are acting on orders of the people? No, the federal government. I'm against the federal government. I always will be. I consider them an enemy to the United States. I can make a great argument for this. For example, the person that you support, Joe Biden, would be considered a war criminal under the jurisdiction of the international criminal courts. And right now, you're probably saying, oh, you're just a whack job. Let's take a look at the definition. Crimes within the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court: war crimes, genocide, crimes of humanity, and crimes of aggression, which, by the way, has not reached a consensus on the definition of punishment or definition. But for the definitions, war crimes include torture, mutilation, corporal punishment, hostage taking, and acts of terrorism. This category also covers violation of human dignity, such as rape, forced prostitution, looting, and execution without trial. War crimes, unlike crimes against humanity, are always committed in times of war. Genocide. This includes all acts committed with the intent to destroy a national, ethnic, or religious group. Crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity are acts committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population. I'll say that again. Crimes against humanity are acts committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population, such as murder, deportation, torture, and rape. The international criminal courts prosecute the perpetrators even if the crimes are not committed in times of war. Now, the United States are not co-signers of the international criminal courts known as the Rome Statutes. I wonder why. What nation on the face of the earth has committed acts of war, more acts of war than us? Nobody. Nobody even comes remotely even close. Not Russia, not China, not Iran. Nobody. And, if you know the quote of H.S. the Greek, where he says the first casualty of war is the truth. Well, isn't that the case with the recent wars of the 20th and 21st centuries? Now, I'm only going to go back 25 years. That's all I need to defend the argument of why a citizen needs weaponry. One, the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Need I say anything more? 1 million people, and if we're going to go by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, it may be up to 2 million, 1.5. Let's just go with 1 million. 1 million people. On what? Why did we invade Iraq? Well, we invaded on a lie. A couple of lies, for example. One, you, as being a JAG lawyer, should know about the CIA's rendition and torture program, which was authorized by who? The people? Nope. By the federal government. The government that you once served. The government that you support. Now, you may not have supported Bush. You may have been an outspoken critic on the torture and rendition program. But that's irrelevant. The government would be guilty of crimes against humanity. Because the CIA did what? Well, they renditioned people. They tortured people. Let's go back. Crimes against humanity are acts committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population, such as murder, deportation, torture. Did we commit acts of torture? Yes. Did we commit acts of murder? Absolutely. Did we commit acts of deportation? Well, the rendition program was about that. We deported Afghan civilians and certain Iraqi nationals and Pakistani, deported them to where? Romania, Germany, Egypt, Afghanistan. I don't need to tell you anything new. You know about this stuff. You're old enough to know what happened during this program that was authorized by the federal government and employed by who? The military and the intelligence services, mainly the CIA. Did the American people do that? No. What did the American people do? Well, the last biggest protest that we've ever had was against the invasion of Iraq. Millions of people around the world protested. Did it help? No. Now let's talk about what led to the war of Iraq. Well, the CIA tortured an individual by the name of Sheikh Ibn al-Libi, an alleged terrorist who basically was tortured by Egyptian authorities under the direction of the Central Intelligence Agency and the DCI, George Tenet, which DCI means Director of Central Intelligence, in regards to maintaining and collecting information regarding any Al-Qaeda affiliates working with the Ba'athist government of Iraq to procure chemical and biological weapons. Well, at first, the CIA said, no, there is no such evidence. But then they were pushed by the Bush administration, also by the neoconservative faction led by Richard Pearl, William Kristol, Paul Wolfowitz, real ghouls, directors of foreign policy. The head of Office of Special Plans, that's Paul Wolfowitz, Douglas Feith, where that room existed because they wanted to facilitate information that would help in the invasion of Iraq, which was supposed to start in 1997-98 under Clinton, but Clinton refused. The only good thing about Clinton. And look what happened to him, the Lewinsky scandal. Coincidence. Nevertheless, it is not known, because it's classified, how many people were renditioned and killed under the rendition program, tortured even. But because al-Libi was tortured, he gave his torturers what they wanted, which was information about Al-Qaeda affiliates working with the Ba'athist government in procuring chemical weapons. Well, it was a lie. And Colin Powell even questioned this, the Secretary of State under Bush, and said, is the information legit? To which Tenet basically told him, yes, it is. But Tenet lied. And because of this lie, Colin Powell went to the UN Security Council and went with this lie. Not to mention another lie, which was coming from the Israeli government, about Mohammed Atta, the lead hijacker for 9/11, meeting with officials about procuring anthrax. Well, he was never in Prague to begin with. That information was also false. But this information regarding Sheikh Ibn al-Libi and regarding Muhammad Atta in Prague, both were lies and led to the invasion of Iraq in 2003, which was authorized by the federal government. Authorized by who? The Republicans? Both Republicans and Democrats. Now, you may say, well, the American military, they won't engage in crimes of humanity. Well, they did, using weapons of war, killing people, renditioning people, torturing people, heck, even raping people. Then we have Afghanistan, which wasn't as big of a war crime. I mean, one of the reasons why we invaded Afghanistan was because we had al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan. Reasonable. Something that I would defend too. But that wasn't the only reason. We secured the Helmand province. Now, what's in the Helmand province? The largest acreage of poppy fields anywhere on earth. And what do we need that for? Why does the British and US military still guard the Helmand province? Thousands of people are dead because of the longest war in US history ended under the Biden administration. Congratulations, Joe Biden. I'm going to get to him in a minute. Also, the 2011 invasion of Syria. Now, you may say, well, Syria invited us to fight against the Islamic State. Sure enough. However, we engaged in war crimes there. We actually defended and funded and trained certain Islamist militant groups, such as Jabhat al-Nusra, Ansar al-Sharia, Ansar al-Islam, through a CIA operation called Timber Sycamore, authorized by who? Obama. Who's his vice president? Joe Biden. This operation lasted until 2017, ended under Trump. One of the good things about Trump, who would think? Operation lasted 6 years, and we tried to use those Islamist groups. By the way, the war on terror, funding these Islamist groups, which are backed by Turkey and Saudi Arabia and other ghoulish Gulf countries. 6 years to try and force the coup of Bashar al-Assad. And now you may say, well, Assad's killing his own people. It's like Saddam Hussein was, right? Yeah. That doesn't mean that you have to engage in illegal activity in forcing a coup of a leader that is fighting against the very people who committed acts of terrorism like 9/11, the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, the bombing of the USS Cole, the bombing of the 1998 East Africa bombings in Tanzania and Kenya, Khobar Towers. The 2011 invasion of Libya. This wasn't Obama's war. This is Hillary Clinton's. Samantha Power, Susan Rice, who said women are progressive. Obama even wrote in his memoirs, worst mistake under his administration. One of them anyway. I can name so many under him. A country that was prospering in Africa under the leadership of Muammar Gaddafi, who, by the way, was the first person in the world to give or order an arrest warrant of Osama bin Laden in 1995, I want to say. Even the United States didn't have that. And because he was part of the Arab World League, which Saudi Arabia wants to control, and because he wanted his own monetary system outside of any Western influence, well, we have to get rid of this guy. He's committing crimes against the people. Oh, good, you killed him. Well, you helped kill him. Remember what Clinton said? We came, he saw him, he died, and then laughed it off. Well, now the country is an open-air slave market. Al-Qaeda affiliates are fighting against the national military, sectarian groups that are fighting over territory, proxy wars, little civil war happening It's been 2 civil wars in that country and no end in sight, thanks to Hillary Clinton. Was it authorized by the American people? No. People actually criticized Clinton and Obama for Syria and Libya. It didn't come out too much later about Timber Sycamore, and nobody gave Obama any harsh criticisms because he's a minority and because he's a progressive. He's not a progressive. He's part of the system that we should be defending from. Innocent civilians are dead, destroyed, killed, probably from the weapons that we've given them to these Islamist groups, buying the oil from these Islamist groups like Islamic State, who captured the oil fields in Damascus. Libya, the weapons that we provided to them there went to these Islamist groups because we don't know where these weapons are going, just like what happens in Ukraine. Even the Pentagon admitted this, Pam Keith. We don't know where the weapons are going. Billions and billions. You think Afghanistan was bad with CIA Operation Cyclone, where we gave hundreds of millions through the Pakistan ISI to these Mujahideen groups? Sound familiar? Well, billions of dollars, military aid going to these separatist groups in Ukraine to fight against the Soviets. And I'm not here to defend the Soviet Union or Russia. They're guilty of war crimes themselves, just like what they did in Afghanistan. But the CIA and the federal government facilitate this because it is a prospect for war of the future. They know that whatever weapons they're going to these right-wing ultranational groups, who the CIA always funds. I mean, I could go back to Central America. You want to talk about the federal government of this country going far back? Well, look what we did to Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Mexico. It's a long-standing history. Now with the Biden administration, a government that you support with your vote. Yemen, the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, the largest since Iraq. 690,000 people are dead, over 2 million displaced. Why? Because we give weapons of military weapons, hundreds of millions of dollars to the one country that we help protect and shield from for their role in 9/11. And also the founders of the Wahhabi ideology, which gave us Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, Boko Haram, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Abu Sayyaf, and countless other small Wahhabi groups that have committed acts of terrorism in their home countries and around the world, a country that we defend. Why? Because we regulate the oil. All those weapons that we've helped given Saudi Arabia were used against the Houthis and the civilian population in southern Yemen. You defend this policy with your vote for Biden, knowing full well that Biden ran against us and said that he would never deal with the Saudis. And the first week when he got in office, what did he do? He signed one of the largest military aid deals in Saudi Arabia history. Broke his own promise, just like every other president ever has. And so, did the people sign off on this? No. The federal government did. The federal government that you support, that you defend, part of it anyway, has committed the following in the previous wars I mentioned. Crimes of aggression, crimes against humanity, and genocide. That's what we have committed. Now, because we're not co-signers of the International Criminal Courts, we can't be held liable. And this is the reason why we're not co-signers, because we can get away with it. Other countries that are not part of it are Iraq, Israel, North Korea, and a couple of other countries I don't forgot. But some of these countries are the biggest abusers of human rights violations. So, Pam Keith, yes, I think the American people should have weapons of war against a country, a government that is supposedly, allegedly supported by the people. Now, I blame the people for doing this, for voting, because they allow these ghouls to represent them. I make no distinction between Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. They're all part of a system that serves against the people. And if you think they can't do it here where it counts, because they know that if they committed these same crimes they did abroad, they would face the wrath of the American people as a unit. That's why they keep us separated and keep us divided along political, racial lines. This is all facilitated by the Democratic and Republican parties. That's why I don't vote. I believe in the commonwealth of the American people, hegemony, real hegemony. And I believe in the dissolution of the federal government. And as long as I'm alive, I will speak out against the federal government of the United States of America. And I will be its sworn enemy. Because if you're going to sit there and argue against Clint and basically say policies you don't like, self-defense from what? Policies you don't like, election results that disappoint you? No, for the very reasons that Clint and others in this thread were trying to tell you. We need these weapons to defend against ourselves from the very government that commits these crimes against people that didn't deserve it in the first place.